Pesachim Daf Tzadik, today's voice note came from Yossi Klein. Played it during Shir. Yossi Klein was a very big part of our Shir. His father has a famous grocery store, I should say, had a famous grocery store in Muncie called Mutti's Grocery, and it burnt down to the ground. And Yossi Klein left me a message, and he said that during the whole balagan, he was very stressed out, but he set aside time during the day of the fire to learn the daf. And I should know that the daf is a tremendous stress relief pill. That was his lashon. And it's a tremendous mechaya, and I should know that it's my fault that he's addicted to the shir. Should be your father's chesaron, and you should all have tremendous hatzlach. And thank you for being such a great part of the shir. If a person designates money, sets it aside for his korban pesach, the money has kedusha of a korban pesach. Then he goes and he purchases a share of somebody else's korban pesach. The halacha is, the Gemara says, that money flips into chulin. It's no longer kaddish. The money exchanges with the korban. And the question is why? We know that if you were to take money that's kaddish and let's say buy a korban that's already kaddish oila, there's nowhere for the kedusha to exchange. Since the korban pesach is already kaddish, where does the kedusha of the money dissipate to? So the Gemara says it must be going according to Rebbe. Rebbe holds that a korban pesach is different than all korbanos. You're mishayer in the korban, meaning you leave room in the korban that's chulin. Where does Rebbe say this? So the Gemara goes on to explain that there's a concept called esnan zayna. It's usher for a zayna to take an animal that was given to her as payment for znos and use it for a korban. Yet, for regular korban, if somebody paid a zayna with, let's say, an oila, you don't need a pasuk to tell me this. Why? Because it's not that person's oila to pay somebody with it. It's not his anymore. It's Kadosh Baruch Hu's. Yet when it comes to korban pesach, I need a special pasuk to say that the zayna could use it as a korban pesach. Why is it? Because it goes according to Rebbe that says mishayer bekarban. It is somewhat the owner's. It's his, and if he gave it to the zayna, perhaps that's a payment. That's why the pasuk says she could still use it for a korban pesach. When it comes to a bird, a regular bird that has no kedusha, and a person pays a zayna with a bird, that's an esnan zayna. You cannot use that. She cannot use that bird for a korban, even though the bird doesn't have the ability to have a mum that passes it. The pasuk says mihiyais miseh. Very interesting wording, mihiyais. What does it mean? We have a machlokes, chachamim and Rebbe. If somebody gets money for his korban pesach, what does he do with it? Chacham say mihiyais miseh. It should be for the korban pesach. Rebbe says it doesn't have to be for the korban pesach. So this is machlokes what that means. One man now says that according to everybody, you could buy wood for the korban pesach because it's for the korban pesach. The machlokes is, could you buy matzu mar, which has somewhat to do with the korban pesach? According to Rebbe, you could. According to Chacham, you can. Another man says no. According to everybody, you could buy matzu mar. It's all one thing. Pesach matzu mar. Machlokes says, could you buy a car with it? Could you buy clothing with it? Rebbe says you could. Chacham say you can't. Abaye says, if not for Rebbe Shai's pshat in esnan zayna, I would say my own pshat. You know why the Torah has to say that you cannot? You could. A zayna could bring a korban pesach that she received as payment, because it goes according to Rebbe Yisrael Glila that says all kachikalim like a shlamim is owned by the owner and not by a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Pesach is kachim kalim, so it's owned by the owner, and he just paid the zayna with it. So it should be a full-fledged esnan zayna. Komash or not. The only problem is that our brisa cannot go according to Rebbe Yisrael Glila. Why is that? Because the brisa says specifically that if you buy with the money a oila or a shlamim, and a shlamim is kachim kalim, lo yasav alei klum, it doesn't work at all. Well, according to Rebbe Yisrael Glila, why not? Why can't you buy a shlamim with money? The shlamim is owned by the owner, so it cannot go according to Rebbe Yisrael Glila. Brand new Mishnah. The Mishnah tells us that a zav, that's a man who had an emission, not a carry, an emission from a disease. If he had two emissions, and it could be in the same day for a man, not for a woman, according to Ula, even if he didn't go to the mikvah, someone else could shech the korban pesach for him. Why? Because that night he's going to be tar. He's going to be tar. Now, if he's a zav that had two emissions, he has to keep 7 days of tahara, 7 clean days. So you could shech the korban for him on the 7th day. Again, it's in his hands to fix it. If he saw 3 emissions, even in one day, not only does he have to wait 7 clean days, but he also has to bring a korban to be mitayar himself. Now he's a mechusar kippur. Now it's no longer in his hands. It's in the hands of the kohen. Where Shmaya says that we can always trust the Kohanim to do their job, and there's a chazaka, they'll do it, and therefore he'll be tar, so you could shecht for him on the 8th day. Let's move on to a zava, a woman who sees dam, not during the 7 days of nida, but the 11 days that follow the nida. Those days are days of ziva. If she sees 1 day or 2 days, 2 consecutive days, she has to keep 1 clean day. She's the shemeres yom keneged yom, 1 clean day. So therefore, you could shecht for her on the 2nd day if she saw 1 day, on the 3rd day if she saw 2 days. If she's a zava g'dayla, meaning she saw 3 consecutive days, now she has to keep 7 clean days and bring a carbon on the 8th day. So once again, it's not in her hands, but we go like Reb Shmai, there's a chazaka, the Kohanim going to do their job. Says Rav a major chiddush, you could shecht a carbon for somebody who's a tvul yaim, who went to the mikvah and just waiting for Herav Shemesh for the nightfall. Or someone who's a Mechusar Kippurim, he's Tamei, let's say he's a Mitzayra, different Tumah, and he's waiting to bring his carbon. You could shecht for him. But you cannot shecht a carbon for somebody who's Tamei from a Sheretz. Now, when it comes to a Mechusar Kippurim, we must say that he brought the birds and he gave it to the Kohanim. He gave it to them, he's mafkid. Now there's chazaka, they're going to take care of their job, and therefore he's good to go. But when it comes to Sheretz, we're concerned that he might not go to the mikvah, there'll be a pshia, he won't go to the mikvah since it's in his hands. Any tamei, even a tamei sheretz, midaraisa, you cannot eat the carbon pesach at night, and therefore, as we had an earlier sugya, if Klal Yisrael is divided exactly 50% that are tar, 50% that are tamei, the trick is you take one person that is tar and you touch him with a sheretz. Now, since midaraisa you cannot eat the carbon pesach that night, now you have a little bit more than 50% that are tamei. And Klal Yisrael brings the carbon Pesach betuma on Pesach Rishon. Ravina learned the brayso that's discussing a nida. If a woman is a nida, you could shecht the carbon Pesach for her on the 8th day, and the chiddush is not on the 7th day, like the brayso says. Different people that are tamei could go to the mikvah on Yom Kippur. A nida and a yeledes, they could go to the mikvah. A nida could go to the mikvah on the night of Yom Kippur. Why is that? Because a nida is different than a zava. A zava could go to the mikvah during the day, and she waits until the night to become tar. A nida has to wait till the night, as it says in the pasuk, Shivas Yomim Tia B'Nidas, a full 8 days, 7 days. And a Yeledes, woman that gave birth, is a hekesh to a nida. However, the rest of the Tmeim, they're Taival Ayim Kippur themselves. Halachically, today, we're passing that you don't go to the mikvah on Yom Kippur. Have a wonderful day.